Please remain seated. The show will begin in 3, 2...
Like a Hellcat.
Hi, I'm FandomTraveller87.
Wanna hear a ghost story?
Hello, cool friends, and all those who are freaky chic. I'm FandomTraveller87. Happy Halloween, everyone. I hope you all have a spooktacular night. Let's continue where we left off. I believe we're right towards the end of our story with Sam and Betsy and the others. Let's dive right back in. The whole group hung out in the living room while Mr. Foley discussed in full detail about his terrifying vision, having gone back in time 50 years ago to what happened to baby Angus and his father, Mr. Kingswood. Seen as well who and of course what was responsible for their deaths. Ed Buchanan was their prime suspect. It was the only logical assumption there seemed to be. And, of course, there seemed to be very strong concrete evidence. Sam was reviewing the evidence of everything that Mr. Foley had found in his vision during the investigation, including the bottle of poison that was used to kill baby Angus. Alright, so you saw an argument between Mr. Kingswood and presumably who seemed to be Mr. Buchanan, correct? They were fighting over a briefcase that contained the $5.5 million of Felicia's inheritance, and Mr. Kingswood obviously knew about the whereabouts of where the briefcase is hidden. But seeing as he refused to give it to Mr. Buchanan, and there was a struggle with the bottle of poison, maybe it's fair to assume that Buchanan was trying to pressure Mr. Kingswood in poisoning his own son, or rather, Mr. Kingswood was trying to stop Buchanan from poisoning his son. Now, I wonder why. A month-old baby who was recovering from tuberculosis, why would Buchanan want to kill a month-old baby for? That baby had nothing to do with either of this. So, I don't understand that part. Well, I mean, there is the situation that Angus was going to get all of Felicia's money that was left in the will, responded Betsy. But that's still no good reason to kill an innocent little baby. I mean, what was Angus going to do, really? And why would Buchanan want all that money? Just why? There's one place we haven't even checked for the will, said Tallulah. We need to go to the attic. I'm positive that is where Felicia hid it. I'm sure of it. Don't you agree, Mr. Foley?
All right then, let's go. Follow me, everyone.
They all treaded up the stairs of the grand staircase and made their way to the drop-down attic door. Tom Foley lifted his arm up as high as he could and pulled down the rope, bringing the ladder down as it folded out. I think Grandma should go first, insisted Betsy Ann. Oh, no, said Tallulah. Mr. Foley should go up first. After all, he might pick something else up, perhaps another helpful vision in assisting us in finding the will. Mr. Foley nodded, and then he began climbing up the ladder, and he crawled inside of the attic and gestured for the others to follow with a simple wave of his hand. So much nostalgia in this room. Having seen Mr. Kingswood's body hanging right in front of that attic window, he could still see part of the telephone cord that was at the murder scene, or the supposed suicide. He huffed. He took a deep breath, exhaling calmly. He then shut his eyes to focus. He listened carefully for any clues or instructions from who or whatever might have something for him to give him direction on where to go. The others stood close behind him, but none of them wanted to approach him, out of respect and seeing as though they didn't want to interrupt or interfere in what he was doing. There was a rush of cold air, and this part of the house was extremely freezing, somewhere around 15 degrees. Tom then felt something tugging at his shirt sleeve on his left, and it was pulling him towards a brick wall. Tom stopped as he felt the front of his shoe hit one of the bottom bricks that was loose. He then opened his eyes and felt around, and then, one by one, he carefully removed every brick. There was a huge opening, some sort of hidden compartment where there seemed to be a safe. Who would cover a safe behind bricks? Was Felicia really that paranoid? And others trying to find the other part of the will? Or whoever was involved in the deaths of the other people who used to live here? Tom didn't waste any time. Tom Foley did not remember the combination to the safe, but Tallulah briskly walked over to him and gently gestured with him by patting on his shoulder for him to move aside. She then took out her stethoscope out of her purse and put it on. She then placed her other hand on the dial, and placing the end piece of the stethoscope on the surface of the safe, she began to play with the dial, turning it here and there to the exact numbers that she was trying to use in order to open the safe. It only took her a couple minutes until she finally heard that click, and she pulled the safe open. Her and Tom peeked inside. There was a rectangular wooden box with Felicia's initials on it. She pulled it out. She lifted up the lid and took out another folded piece of parchment paper. Sam, Betsy, and Marigold stood behind them, examining the piece of parchment. Tom Foley then unfolded the parchment and read what they all confirmed to be the bottom half of Felicia's will that was missing. "Well, what's it say, Mr. Foley?" Sam couldn't contain his excitement. None of them could. Mr. Tom Foley cleared his throat.
Should anything happen to my firstborn, my son, Angus Smith Kingswood, before his 21st birthday, such as he may succumb to his illness of tuberculosis, all my assets and properties, including the house and its land of 35 acres, as well as my inheritance of $5.5 million, everything shall go to my dear friend, Mr. Thomas Foley, who has been financially and emotionally supportive of me for all these years that I've known him. Nothing shall go to my husband due to his embezzlement scandals and his corrupt business practices, as well as his own adultery and deceit, and all the pain that he has caused the residents of this town that him and his family are responsible for, as well as defaming my own family name.
Oh my golly, exclaimed Marigold. Thomas Foley, you lucky son of a gun. Thomas Foley reread that bottom half of the will maybe 2 or 3 times, trying to process what he just read. He still couldn't believe it. They were all cheering him, as though he just won the lottery, or maybe an all-paid expense trip on some sort of cruise. It was like so surreal. He actually owned everything that Felicia owned. He was getting every last bit, the whole enchilada. Then they heard heavy footsteps behind them, and they all turned. Emerging from the shadows, it was Phil. Phil? Sam stammered. What are you doing here? Phil had a rather stoic, calm expression on his face, rather cold and calculating, as he slowly pulled out a handgun, locking and loading it. Betsy Ann had a hunch. She pressed the play button on the recorder. Marigold and Betsy switched hands, as Betsy exchanged the recorder for a pocket knife. They knew where this was going. They could both feel it in their gut. They just had to make sure to conceal the recorder so nobody, especially Phil, knew what they were up to. Phil, what's the meaning of this? Asked Sam, startled. Why do you have a gun? Phil glared at the boy. I told you to stay away, Sam, he scolded, but you just couldn't listen. You just had to stick your nose where it didn't belong. All of you. Get over there, by the window. Otherwise, I will blow one of your brains out. You hear me? They all hesitated, but they did as they were told.
Hello, Ed. Long time no see, pal.
Hello, Thomas. Missed me?
It's over, Buchanan. You're finished. You're not going to get away with this anymore. We're going to get the police over here, and you're going to spend the rest of your miserable, pathetic life behind bars for everything that you did to this family. You understand? I won't let you hurt anyone anymore.
Ed Buchanan wiped the tears from his eyes. He looked quite amused by the outburst. Oh, Foley, will you shut up? I didn't want it to come to this, but you all forced my hand. The Kingswood clan destroyed mine. I've spent the last over 50 years since I was a boy having to salvage everything that Kingswood took from us. Every piece of scrap, every penny of asset that he swindled my own daddy of. Not just poker games, no. He was trying to take my family's land from us Everything you see on my property that remains is that sawmill. The only thing that is left of my daddy's legacy. So much misfortune. So much scandalous, corrupt business practice. Kingswood and I were partners once. You should know that very well, Foley. We were all a team, weren't we? But you know, Kingswood cheated you too, didn't he? Wouldn't you like to tell everyone that? Well, the secret's out now.
Buchanan, you bastard. Of course I know. Kingswood made some bad investments on an oil rig when we were in college. And we couldn't pay the tuition.
All right. Now where is the $5.5 million? I know one of you have the briefcase. Now hand it over. Damn it, Buchanan, we don't have the briefcase. We don't know where it is. I'm gonna take what's rightfully mine, and none of you is gonna stop me. Now I suggest one of you cough it up, or one of you is gonna join the rest of them. Who wants to volunteer? You're not gonna get away with this, Buchanan. Oh, don't you worry, Thomas, replied Tallulah reassuringly, a cat who ate the canary smile now etching slowly on her lips. It won't be the cops that dear Eddie over here will have to answer to. Ugh, seriously? Ed snapped. What are you blabbing on about, woman? Come now. You all don't seriously believe in all that hogwash. There ain't no such thing as... What is this? You meddling kids trying to pull some prank on me? Well, I ain't falling for it. All of you just stay where you are. You think you can make a fool out of me again? I don't think so. You all are in cahoots.
This isn't a prank, Ed. Felicia is here. She's always been in this house. Ever since you took her life. And her son's. You have to take responsibility for your own actions. Everyone you screwed over, especially the ones that died in this house, they're going to make you pay for your crimes against them. We all know what you did, and you know that it was wrong. You let your greed and your jealousy cloud your better judgment. You weren't good enough for Felicia. She didn't want anything to do with you. The police may not believe a word of this, of what happened tonight, but finally justice will be served. Just as Felicia wanted, even if she has to deal with you herself.
Ugh. Do I have to keep telling you, Foley? I was a father to Angus. I begged Felicia to leave her husband, to tell him the truth. Felicia and I were together for a short time before she even married that incompetent moron. That old, fat, disgusting, double-crossing jerk. If I couldn't have my son with me at least, then she couldn't. None of them could be a parent. I wasn't just gonna stand around and have somebody rob me again of something that was rightfully mine from the start. What? You're Angus's father? Bellowed Betsy Ann. Yes, I just said that, girl. Are you deaf? I was Angus's father, but Felicia didn't want anybody to know. She felt as though I would be an unfit daddy to my baby boy. You know something? She truly was a witch. She didn't care about anybody but herself. She was just trying to protect her own self-interest. Well, I've been bamboozled enough in my life. That baby was a part of me. I didn't want to have to kill it, but that thing just wouldn't shut up. If it just stopped crying. Everybody just froze, stunned. Ed backed away slowly, his eyes averting quickly around the room. You all. You really are just trying to scare me, aren't you? The light bulb above them began to flicker. And then all of a sudden, just like Mr. Kingswood, Ed felt something tighten in his chest. He was gasping for air, and his body twitched and contorted, and he was slowly lifted off of the ground just a few feet in midair, his body twisting like a pretzel. Bones were snapping, muscles were tearing, Ed's eyes were rolling in the back of his skull as his jaw dropped into an almost silent scream, but then he could finally have his voice break out, a blood-curdling shriek of agony. They could all see the whites in his eyes. Marigold was standing behind Ed's levitating body, holding the very spell book that belonged to Kingswood. She was inciting an incantation from the book, and beside her was the 12-foot tall creature. Marigold, Betsy Ann called out. It's all right, darling. Everyone just trust me, she said as she paused. Then another apparition stood beside Marigold. It was Susie. Everybody stood there wide-eyed in horror, watching the scene unfold. Nobody could speak, except Marigold, who stared up at Buchanan with hatred in her eyes, her voice low and eerie. You let that monster roam free, Buchanan. You took Kingswood's spell book and used it against this family. My daughter died because of your cruelty. She didn't know any better. She was dealing with a force that she couldn't comprehend. She didn't know any better. She was just a child. She was 10 years old, her whole life ahead of her. And she was taken from me. And then you kill my best friend, my sister. Then you go off and have her baby poisoned. Who do you think you are, you son of a bitch? I'm gonna make you suffer for what you did. I'm gonna make you feel the pain that her good-for-nothing, low-life husband went through. I could kill you, but I'm above that. She snapped her fingers, and Ed Buchanan's nearly limp body hits the floor. He lands on his stomach. Ed's eyes are bulging wide. He groans in pain. It's like the wind was knocked out of him. His body is still in a weird, awkward, and not so comfortable position, literally twisted like a pretzel. All of his bones are broken. Well, mostly in his arms and legs. He's lucky he can even move his head, but just barely, as he stares up at the others, petrified with fear. "Help me, please. Don't leave me like this." Ed Buchanan stares up at the others, mostly at Sam, his eyes petrified with fear. He seemed to be pleading, his eyes swollen, red and puffy, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Sam, please, son, help me. Don't leave me like this." But nobody wanted to touch him. Marigold casually shuts the spellbook and holds it at her side, staring down at Buchanan coldly. I think it's time for a little reunion, don't you think so, Tallulah? No, please, Marigold. Don't do this. I'll do anything you want. I'll give you anything. Just please, let me go. That sounds like a mighty fine idea, Mary, replied Tallulah with a widened smile. What do you say, Ed? You can always get the one thing you wished for. You can see Felicia again, one last time. What? Please, ladies, don't do this to me. I'll even give you half of the $5.5 million. It doesn't have to be like this. This could all be our little secret. What do you say, ladies? It doesn't have to be like this. Please don't kill me. The wooden floor began to shake violently, and it started to splinter, then opening a huge, gaping crater, and then a cold, clammy, rotting, bony hand dug its way out of the dirt, red lights beaming from inside of the hole. Then several spirits surrounded Ed Buchanan. He was in a rather frozen stiff state of shock. He couldn't move anymore. The face that he saw emerging from that hole is the last thing he would ever see. Mr. Kingswood! Everyone looked at the clock. It was midnight. The mutilated, grotesque, skeletal face, the rotting flesh that remained on the specter of his deceased partner. It just made Ed want to rip out his own eyeballs. With one cold, clammy, bloody, meaty hand, Kingswood dug his nails into the flesh of Ed's wrist. Ed screamed in pain as flames traveled up his arm, then quickly engulfing his entire body. It was a hellfire so powerful that it burned him alive until nothing remained but ashes. Then the light bulb began to flicker once more, and then the room became pitch black, but just for a few seconds. And once the light came back on, everything was normal. All that remained on the ground was Ed Buchanan's gun, with his fingerprints. And then a white light emerged from the wall. It had a form to it, and once it gradually had come into a full shape of a person, Everybody knew who it was. It was Felicia. She looked just as she did all those years ago, beautiful and as young as ever. And she was holding her baby in her arms. Felicia's ghost looked to Tallulah and Marigold with reassuring nods, and then at Sam and Betsy. She looked so happy and relieved.
Thank you. Thank you all. We'll be forever grateful.
Then she faded away, and everything felt so warm now and calm and peaceful in the house. Susie had gave a nod to Sam and winked before also disappearing. Sometime later, the group met back at Marigold's farm. They sat at the dining room table, drinking apple cider and playing a little game of cards, going over everything that occurred during that night. Marigold then got up and went to the living room to her large closet. She undid the chains and unlocked the door, then pulled out a large black briefcase. She then came over and sat it down in the center of the table, showing it to Tom. This is yours. Felicia wanted you to have this.
Wait, you had the money this whole time? Why didn't you say anything, Mary?
Okay. I'll admit. Felicia wanted me to keep this a secret. She didn't trust anybody, not even herself, to keep this money safe. So she left it to me. And, well, there you have it. A thank you would be nice. Fully.
Gee, yes. Thank you, Mary.
Everybody had a good laugh about it. And from that night on, their lives changed for the better. Sam's mother, Paula, returned to town. She was arrested for child abuse and neglect, having lost full custody of Sam. Sam, through a messy legal custody battle, Tallulah was given legal guardianship of Sam, and she took him in as her own. Sam became like a big brother to Betsy Ann. Tallulah and Tom started seeing each other quite frequently. They were officially dating. As for Marigold, she took over Ed Buchanan's sawmill and his meat shop, having bought his entire property to expand her farming so she could grow produce, raise new livestock, and also make the lake public access to everyone who wanted to go fishing or go for a swim. As for McKinley, she was no longer a librarian or a local historian. She, in fact, became the mayor of the town. Now, finally, we've reached the end of this tale. Perhaps, though, this isn't the end of Sam and Betsy Ann's journey. Perhaps it's just the new beginning of a brand new adventure. I really do hope that you guys enjoyed this story. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for all future juicy content. And please check out all my other videos. I'm sorry that it took this long to upload. It's been a very, very busy day. And I was throwing a little bit of a Halloween get-together. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. Happy Halloween, everyone. Bye-bye.